Every day, nearly 20% of the world's oil passes through a narrow stretch of water between Iran and Oman. It's called the Strait of Hormuz. Strait of Hormuz. President Trump asked the chairman of the Joint Chiefs why they can't just immediately reopen the Strait of Hormuz. It's one of the many countries hoping the U.S. can reopen the nearby Strait of Hormuz. At its narrowest point, this global energy lifeline squeezes through a corridor just 21 miles wide, but the actual shipping lanes are even smaller, just 2 meters wide in each direction. That narrow corridor carries tens of millions of barrels of oil every single day, which means one thing. If something disrupts the Strait of Hormuz, the entire global economy feels it almost immediately. And lately, tensions in the region have reminded the world just how fragile this choke point really is. Warships patrol the waters, insurance premiums for oil tankers surge, shipping companies quietly prepare contingency plans. In recent years, the Strait has been the stage for seized tankers, damaged ships, and direct military confrontations. It is one of the few places on Earth where a single miscalculation could ignite a wider conflict. Please take a moment to subscribe and like the video. It really helps the channel. The Strait isn't officially closed, but the possibility that it could be disrupted is enough to send global energy markets into panic. And that panic doesn't stay on trading floors. A disruption here wouldn't just be a geopolitical crisis. It would mean higher fuel prices, rising transportation costs, and more expensive goods on store shelves felt from New York to Tokyo, which raises a fascinating question. What if ships didn't have to pass through the Strait of Hormuz at all? For decades, engineers and strategists have discussed a radical idea: a massive canal cutting through the mountains of Oman's Musandam Peninsula, allowing ships to bypass the strait entirely. On paper, it sounds like the ultimate solution. But reality has a way of making simple ideas much more complicated. To understand the canal idea, you first have to understand the geography. The Persian Gulf is home to some of the largest oil producers on Earth: Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates. Almost every tanker leaving these countries must pass through a single exit, the Strait of Hormuz. Roughly 20 million barrels of oil move through this corridor every day. That's about 1/15 of global oil consumption. Few places on Earth carry this level of economic importance. And unlike many other trade routes, there are very few alternatives. Some countries have tried to reduce their dependence on the strait. Saudi Arabia built pipelines that move oil across the Arabian Peninsula to ports on the Red Sea. The UAE built a pipeline that connects its oil fields directly to the port of Fujairah outside the Strait of Hormuz. But even combined, these pipelines can only carry a fraction of the oil that normally travels by tanker. For the rest of the world's energy supply, ships remain essential, which means the global economy still depends on this narrow gateway. And that dependency makes engineers very uncomfortable because choke points concentrate risk. And few choke points on Earth are as sensitive as this one. Now look at the map again. At the northern tip of Oman lies a rugged piece of land called the Musandam Peninsula. It stretches into the Strait of Hormuz like a jagged mountain fortress. But here's the interesting part. In several places, the distance between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman is surprisingly short. Only a few dozen miles of land separate the two bodies of water, which raises an obvious idea. Why not dig a canal straight through the peninsula? Ships leaving the Persian Gulf could bypass the Strait of Hormuz entirely. Instead of navigating a narrow geopolitical choke point, tankers could sail directly into the open ocean. A brilliant idea on a flat map. But the terrain tells a very different story. The Musandam Peninsula is not flat desert. It's part of the Hajar Mountains, one of the most rugged landscapes in the Middle East. Sharp limestone peaks rise dramatically from the coastline. Some mountains here climb more than 2,000 meters above sea level. That's more than 6,500 chiwart. Building a canal here wouldn't mean dredging sand. It would mean cutting through entire mountains, and the canal would have to be enormous. Modern oil tankers, known as very large crude carriers or VLCCs, are among the largest ships ever built. To accommodate them safely, a canal would need to be deep, wide, and stable enough for ships hundreds of meters long. The excavation required would be staggering. Millions upon millions of tons of rock would need to be blasted, cut, and removed. Entire mountain ridges would have to be reshaped. The environmental impact alone would be enormous, and the cost, possibly hundreds of billions of dollars. To put that in perspective, even the massive Panama Canal expansion cost around $5 billion. A Musandam Canal could dwarf that many times over, but engineering is only half the challenge. Even if the technical challenges could somehow be solved, another obstacle immediately appears: Politics. The Musin Dam Peninsula belongs to Oman. And as of today, there is no official plan to build a canal here. Oman's development strategy for the region focuses on tourism, ports, and regional infrastructure, not carving a shipping corridor through its mountains. A project of this scale would require extraordinary international cooperation. Regional governments would need to support it, investors would need to finance it, and long-term security guarantees would need to protect it. Because there is another uncomfortable truth. A canal would not eliminate vulnerability. It would simply move the choke point somewhere else. Instead of the Strait of Hormuz, global oil flows would depend on a single artificial canal. And like any canal, it could still be blocked. A grounded tanker, a targeted attack, or even a natural disaster. Any one of these events could shut the route down overnight. The global economy would simply trade one bottleneck for another. So if the Musin Dam Canal is so difficult, why does the idea keep coming back? Because it reveals something deeper about how the modern world works. Global trade depends on geography, a narrow canal in Egypt, a strait between rival nations, a handful of shipping corridors that quietly keep the global economy moving. For centuries, these natural choke points have shaped the flow of energy, goods, and power across the planet. The Musin Dam Canal represents a dream, a way to redesign geography itself, to remove one of the world's most fragile bottlenecks. But reality is stubborn. Mountains are difficult to move. Politics is even harder. For now, the Strait of Hormuz remains exactly what it has always been, one of the most important and most vulnerable energy corridors on Earth. And as long as the world depends on it, the idea of a canal through Musin Dam will continue to capture the imagination of engineers, strategists, and anyone wondering just how fragile our global trade system really is.